Inside Story Uganda. Real
of
source
course,
of political
takes the day
updates.
for the violence and all the irregularities. DP started everything with their delegates conference that turned out to be so dramatic. NUP had a questionable delegates conference. Do you imagine that political parties are living a lie when it comes to internal democracy?
You forgot about UPC, which took theirs to Kamudini.
That's part of Uganda.
And shows that they are interested in only Lango. I think, one, all these political parties are just building for the post-NRM and Museveni era. For example, I'll tell you, FDC, just like you see in Kenya, is branding itself that for us we will be Nandara Bugisu. UPC will fight to have Lango on its credit. Then the other, of course, NUP is fighting to remain with half of Uganda to share it with the DF. And then, of course, DP for that one, it no longer has a strong region and it will come out weak. Then the NRM, who have stuck on Museveni, will basically have about 10 factions past Museveni because they have not built institutions or any transitional kind of strategy. So these other parties, just like you see, for example, I will ask you, why would you see UPC, Akena continue? Most of them are convinced, especially the situation Uganda is in. They are convinced that they cannot, all these parties, they cannot make more than 50 MPs. But they are preparing
you had
for...
Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi saying this time they are willing to post more than 100 MPs to Parliament.
If even NUP, National Unity Platform, is convinced, because, for example, if it's what they are saying, more than 100, why are they saying more than 100? As the oppositional party, you remember the excitement which FDC used to bring. They would be right now having even in their thoughts who will be the army commander in case NUP takes. But ask them, are they thinking about government? When you are the oppositional party, you should be now thinking about the possibility of getting government.
They are fielding Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi as a presidential candidate.
No, but you know, government is not only about president. It's about now the military, who will be, for example, among the standing arm officers, who will be their CDF, who will be their, because that's where the real power lies. So all these parties you see are just preparing for transition. They are not stating it. But NUP is convinced that it cannot form the next government. So they are preparing for what will happen past President Museveni. Whereby, in that case, when the NRM has also fragmented, because I think NRM will also have 5 factions, like you saw in Kenya, where the KANU or Ford, there would be about 3 Fords. And so some of the factions, by the way, what is interesting is that some of the factions in NRM can join some of these political parties. Like you see how our aunt is coming back because they thought now their problem, and they say was Nandara Mafami is sorted. So Uganda will, but to me, the only analysis is that we are setting back, we are moving in reverse, because this is going to bring about the reintroduction of those sectarian politics the NRM had tried to address. Because I was told, for example, in Chigezi area, where they had gone away from voting in terms of religion, they've come back to it. Now we are seeing regional politics, political parties coming up, which the NRM before had sorted. But I think this is destroying what would call multi-party politics.
Okay, when, for instance, you look at NRM, as a remedy, they set up a tribunal to listen to the petitions, to try to analyze the petitions and come to a conclusion on who won, who lost, and what was at the center of all the chaos. Do you think the tribunal is trying to further build or rather further enhance the democracy within the party?
The tribunal, it's also another kind of comic thing, because how do you, by now the cases are over 500, how do you listen to 500 such cases, because they are saying they are listening to 50 cases per day? How? Yet in even courts of law with senior judges, they take more than 2 years. But also the other weakness in the tribunal was that they would have volunteered at least some of the historical members. But who is, for example, Barata and Musime tribunal? If in NRM itself, who knows Barata and who knows Musime? We have their historicals like Amama Mbabazi and Rugunda. Why aren't they participating in convincing? Because NRM is lucky, it would even, because the only way, since we know most of these people have gone into the politics because of monetary ends, they would have one of these elders convincing the people who have lost, because the whole thing is about money, to be given some positions, and that's how maybe they would reach a compromise. Because the only way, even in the justice system, it is by compromise. Otherwise, this thing of sitting for 3 hours to sort such a case of electoral malpractices is not possible.
Wants to interject.
First of all, my brother here doesn't have all the information on the tribunal and internal NRM processes. Yes, it is true there are mistakes arising out of election officials, but their mistakes are arising out of we, the candidates, and our supporters. There are cases that are legal in nature, and those are before the tribunal. There are batteries, there are over 30 lawyers there in the tribunal, and they are listening expeditiously. They are joining some of the petitions. For example, a constituency, you may find 2 candidates are petitioning. They are putting those petitions together, they reduce them to few issues, and parties argue them. After 7 days, or within 7 days, they should be able to give their ruling. Either they maintain, they cancel the results as declared, and advise or order rerun. We have a second process, which is the reconciliation. We have at the national, and we have at the regional, and the regional may even break to specific districts.
But
so
it's constrained by time.
No. So the reconciliation, things that are essentially political in nature, like when you say somebody comes and says, you see, I had already spent 20 million, what do I do? Me, a fellow candidate, probably I can offer to reimburse some money. That happens in politics. So there are 2 processes: the tribunal, which is handling the legal, and then the political, which is a reconciliation. And this is not the first time. In all the elections NRM has had since 2005, we have had huge fallouts, and we have gone through the tribunal, we have also gone through the reconciliation, and we have been in a time to bring candidates for nomination when the National Electoral Commission calls for nomination in September or October. So
thank you for that information, but it is not possible, because even if you gave them 6 months, you cannot settle. Actually, NRM is likely to have more independent candidates.
No, that can be true, but what I'm saying is that the tribunal and the reconciliation committee will conclude by the time of nomination. Now, if somebody, for some reason, does not agree with the reconciliation, does not agree with the tribunal finding, they are free. They will be free. Our strong advice would be, don't go. We have had many, and even when they go as independent, they have never overrun the NRM number in Parliament.
Contradictions of a political nature will be handled by SEC after the tribunal has done its work. So, and that's why we put primaries in July, and the nomination is for parliamentary candidates is 16, 17 September, to give room for all those that.
Well, before I leave you, Prof, of all the parties now gearing up to 2026 and running on the political landscape, Where do you see a semblance of internal party democracy?
It's like I told you, when FDC did it, their father, NRM, who would have been happy, was sort of envious. And NRM would have left FDC to develop that, and it would be to their credit.
So FDC had set a bar?
It set a bar, but NRM again came and killed the baby. So you will never see. Actually, it's as if we are retrogressive as a country.
NRM killed how?
I mean, by whatever you did, by disorganizing,
I just told
even
you that FDC is alive and kicking and strong. Now, for you are saying we have
No.
the chairman is saying the party is strong.
by the allegation and by even getting the key players, and up to now, people still look at Dr. Kizza Besigye as a victim of the state.
Well, Council George, should we look at the template of NUP as maybe the benchmark of internal party democracy, looking at the current process of vetting and how it's being conducted?
Well, you may want to look at it, but every society, every party tailors its internal processes depending on the environment, as long as the core principles of transparency, accountability, and inclusiveness are met. There is no one face fits all for democracy, even if you are to analyze the different democracies. Even in some countries, actually, people elect parties, and the parties sit and choose who should be the president. In some other countries, a person with a popular vote doesn't necessarily become president, like we saw Hillary Clinton with over 2 million popular votes. In fact, even that, there are people who think that it should be changed to popular vote. So and then the broader picture that even I want to look at when I had Centenary talking about personalities is we are being, if we analyze multipartyism in Uganda without looking at the broader context of in which parties operate, we would be being foolhardy. The broader context is that actually parties since even the 2005-6 have not been given leg to operate the way multipartyism should operate. And that space has even been becoming more restrictive by the day, that to the extent that at times, even opening a party office, a branch, is met with brutality, and you're even forced not to assemble to open a branch.
Yeah.
So it's foolhardy to imagine that, and that's why I don't want to look at.
So the whole idea of vetting, does it really build?
Of course, you're looking at vetting in isolation of all the other things, Simon. Honorable Pariamus said that they also do some sort of vetting for different reasons at different stages. Vetting is not an end in itself, as it is with NUP. It's one of the part of the processes. Vetting is just part of the processes.
Okay, is it a hallmark of internal democracy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Internal democracy doesn't have a single face fits all. No. What happens is all the people who would want to take part in that process given an equal chance. That is one. Do they know the rules?
In reality, do they?
Absolutely.
What are the rules?
The last time in 2021, and of course I had Professor Rogers, I wanted to debunk one of the theories. He's saying, maybe it's an academic theory, that NUP is not ready because they have not told us who is going to be a commander or Bank of Uganda governor. Of course, it presupposes that NUP should name every person who is going to be, if they want to take over government. I think that is looking at it in a very simplistic way, because even who are you going to replace each and every person in the first place when you take over government? Secondly, even the theory of saying that, the NRM tribunal, of course I have my problems with that tribunal for different reasons. The reasons you give that no one can competently hear substantive matters in that short time, especially if the matters are that serious. But not on the basis of, Musime and Barata, because are you saying that the Council of Elders will hear 400 petitions? If you're saying let's bring the historicals, are they going to hear the 400 petitions? So I think we can...
No, I want to take you back to your vetting.
Yes.
Vetting. How practical is it?
Well, it's practical.
In entrenching internal party democracy, given, of course, the shenanigans that have already been highlighted, especially matters to do with interest politics of hegemony and other evils.
And formerly with the chairperson of the Electoral Commission having been a candidate herself.
No, the chairperson is not a candidate. Yes, formally. But the essence is, the last time we had that kind of process, of course, has even been enhanced now. There was an appellate body. Any person who was aggrieved with the outcome of the Election Management Committee decision would appeal to that body. And I sat on that body in 2020. And you would call out that, just like courts do, call out the lower file, under what circumstances did you come up with this candidate? I can assure you, first of all, very fewer people appealed than those who participated in the lower process. But for all those where the results were against them, and even when they went ahead and stood as independents, the popular decision bore out with them. I can give an example. There was Honorable Segirinya. Many people thought that the suitable MP should be Honorable Chidandala. Honorable Chidandala was even a staff of NUP then. And many people thought that how can NUP give Segirinya a ticket other than Chidandala? Many people even said that NUP is being a foot soldier party. Those were the reasons given. But the reason was, the popular sentiments on the ground were that Segirinya was more popular than Chidandala, despite the other reasons people had for Chidandala. So the vetting is just part of the process. Every political contestation will bring complaints. There are complaints everywhere. There are complaints in all the parties. Even if there was an electoral college in OO's style of lining up, it has more complaints. There are about 400 former ones. We don't know how many are. So the essence is, can you give a person complaining a chance to be heard? Can that complaint be heard fairly? Can the person be given an equal chance to participate in all the processes?
How about allegations that, they are the favored ones, the blue-eyed close friends, the cronies of the principal, who have an automatic guarantee to a ticket?
Like who? If you look at, first of all, as we speak now, there is not a single person who has been declared as a flag bearer. That is for the start. Secondly, if you are to look at the benchmark of the last elections, there is even a brother of his who didn't get a party ticket, who was interested.
Who can deny Rubongo a ticket?
Who is standing against him?
They asked Katabu to step down.
Who asked him?
They asked Katabu.
Who asked him?
At the funeral of his mother,
yes.
The principal himself said, I sat these two down.
Yes, and what is wrong with that? The problem would be if they forced Katabu to step down. There are places where people have been asked to step aside, and they have not stepped aside.
The big man's request is a command.
No, not necessarily. That only works in FDC. What happens in NUP is that if you are trying to build consensus, and it happens,
took the principle to sit these two down instead of subjecting them to a process.
No,
where if an eligible, the most eligible would win.
Processes of consensus happen outside the formal process of the nomination and what you have subjected yourself to. The EMC is not party to the consensus. No one can force you to remove your forms which you put with EMC. However, when it comes to consensus outside that process, any person can sit us down. The challenge would be if a person is forced to step aside.
What would be wrong with allowing Katabu to stand against the party secretary general, subject themselves to a process, so the EMC comes to a conclusion on who stands better chances?
But the process of consensus has not been only done in Kampala Central. There are other candidates elsewhere, some of whom I can give an example of Bashir Kasaga, known as Motive, who is a person who is so close at the secretariat. Didn't he step aside for another person? So why do you look at Kampala Central in isolation of all the other processes?
No, it's
over 100 places.
It's a big case. Yeah. It's a big case that we can use as a sample.
Well, Katabu is willingly stepped aside. Just like Centenary said that Power pulled out the papers. And
out
now
of
when
consensus.
It comes, because out of his own will. And like I said, it can only be a problem if a person was forced to step aside. However, in terms of consensus building, everywhere in the world, I gave you an example that Biden, was he forced out? He stepped aside.
Honorable Bariomunsi, when you take a deeper look at democracy within the national inter-platform, what is your reading on how things are evolving? There is consensus building, there is an EMC, there is vetting.
My reading is that there is a lot of subjectivity and the principle dictating who becomes the flag bearer and who. That kind of negotiation and consensus building where the president of the party sits you down, I am certain in that discussion he shows where he is. Yes, hold on. Those are not. He shows his preference. And of course, when the principal says, I prefer Musisi to this, or he indicates it, then there is an unfairness. And I can bet it's going to affect the fortunes of NUP as far as parliamentary candidates are concerned. Let me draw a parallel with NRM. NRM, how we have evolved. In 2005, 2006, when we went into multi-party politics under this constitution, we began with electoral college. Leaders, elected leaders, choosing flag bearers. Later we discussed it in 2009, 2010. There was the issue of compromising some of the delegates by candidates. There were allegations of hiding candidates, hiding the delegates from other candidates. Then we changed to let every member of NRM vote by secret ballot. So in 2010, we went to adult suffrage, voting by secret ballot. We later reviewed, so 2010, 2015, that's how we did it. Now towards 2020, 2021, we reviewed, and again there were challenges. Maybe some members can access ballot papers and so forth. That's how we took a decision to lining up. So like parliamentary candidates, you will
But
never,
it is also now problematic.
No, just hold on. You will never hear a situation where, say, President Museveni is showing preference on who becomes MP. It is the people down there. Now, in this election...
Can I remind you of Zimbabwe? The Shatsi Sodo case? You are aware of the back and forth meetings that were held to the extent.
Then what happened? Did the president dictate on who becomes the flag bearer?
Now you are changing your diction.
No.
Yes, you raised the issue of subjectivity.
So
it was the president who was at the center of these meetings, these negotiations.
No, it was the SEC. Like I said, this tribunal is handling these petitions, and some of them will end up in the Central Executive Committee for political resolve, so forth. So the lining up, which we came up with, is that this time around, we produced a party register. And it is
where your name was missing.
No. I was in.
No, you never found your name on the register. It was later corrected. We got it on impeccable grounds, impeccable record. That when you went to check, your name wasn't on the register.
No, first of all, to be nominated, you had to prove that you are a member of NRM and you are in the register. So how was I nominated? And the final register again, I was there. So you are now depending on rumors. I do not know that I'm not in the register. When I went for nomination, I requested for a membership slip, which I was given. And in the final register, I was a member and I voted in Igweba de Seru, Nyakazinga Parish, Kayungo Sub-County. So what are you talking about? So the members who are in the register are the ones who voted. And you vote?
Honorable Bariomunsi, the Director of Communications at the NRM Secretariat, Honorable Dombo, was here. And he said, we realized there were a few hiccups, among which names of certain people, including Dr. Chris Bariomunsi, were not on the register. But we were quick to correct the anomaly.
No, what happened was that the register was prepared by the Secretariat. That's a membership register, because we're registering 16 years and above. And then the 16 to 18 was extracted and remained with a voters register, which was handed over to the Electoral Commission. I think the Electoral Commission went to clean it. There must have been some computer application they applied, and then the names went zigzag, which they corrected and had a final.
Even next election is zigzag.
And actually, that's the reason why we display a register as a draft and to go through processes, because you cannot avoid the mistakes. What is important is at the final end, what we now say, it is the final register.
The final register.
Does it have the names of the eligible voters and the candidates?
But his name was missing.
It doesn't matter.
No.
A member of SEC.
That's
how weird it is.
You remember in the previous election, when the president actually ordered that they should disregard the register, anybody should come and vote.
No, but let me clarify what I was saying. I think where the challenge came in, just briefly, with some computer application, which I think distorted the naming. But at the end, it was corrected, and the final register had the names. I was in the register, I voted. So what are you talking about? So it was not a big issue. It was not a big issue, but there was a register. And it is those who are in the register that vote by lining up, and we think our process is very transparent. They count when everybody is there, and they will say, Baliomunsi, you have 200 people there. Ofwono Opondo, you have 250, and everybody sees that.
Why would there be so many petitions if indeed the register was transparent, everything was smooth?
Well,
what would warrant all these petitions?
I have somebody who stood against me, and he scored 104 votes in the constituency. But he has also petitioned. And when you see the reason he's saying, you see, when the minister was campaigning, people were happy dancing. That's one of the reasons he's putting. He was explaining that he has roofed churches. Why was he saying he has roofed churches? Such as things. So some of the reasons are very frivolous, but they are right to petition. And that's why there's a tribunal to process all those.
Okay. The president himself came out in his first letter, actually.
Yes.
In reaction to the outcome.
Yes.
He acknowledged there were hiccups in the process. Does that tell you that indeed
no, yes, the
system...
What occasion is the hiccups that the election in NRM is a massive exercise. It's actually bigger than that of the Electoral Commission of Government. Because, yes, in our case, a polling station is a village. Every village is a polling station. Whereas for the Jawaka Electoral Commission, you combine villages to have a polling station. So you can imagine the logistics required to have that kind of huge, humongous election. And you must have an electoral official, a registrar at every village.
Okay, as I move to OO.
Some of these registrars may not be well educated and so forth. So those challenges are there. But all in all, it's a fairly transparent and inclusive
as
process.
I move to OO, Council George tells us that their system, problematic as it may be, under the circumstances, is preferable to yours of lining up. Theirs is vetting. There is an elections management committee, and there is harmonization in the background.
Well, I doubt the scientificity of their process, because last night there was another talk show where one of the NUP leaders was saying part of the, I think 60% is the vetting by the committee.
No, the other round.
The 40% by the committee, then 60% popularity in the community. How they measure that, I am not sure of the scientific method they use, but I strongly believe there is a lot of subjectivity, very subjective in assessing and coming up with a candidate, which I think will create challenges. But in our case, the members of NRM line up in broad daylight. If they are for centenary, there is a line for centenary, for Baliomunsi there. Actually, there is a little rigging if
Sure,
any.
Honorable Mzee.
When you're talking about
There are
rigging,
400 petitions, Honorable Bariomus.
Yes, petition is okay.
yeah, but you even
That
saw,
doesn't mean-
you
of course
saw
you see-
Talk about
videos
rigging.
of school children queuing up to vote.
And also a minister saying that even babies in the womb
What
were
was that?
counted.
And in other instances, people were in the queue.
That's
who
why
were
there is
being
a
given
tribunal to assist
1,000
all
votes.
those. That's why there is a tribunal. But in terms of transparency, they are comparing their vetting with our system, where the members of the party line up and you can see who has support. Maybe the cheating can be when they are writing the DR forms, falsifying results and so forth, which the tribunal has to cross-check and so forth. But ours is very transparent and inclusive, and the members make a collective decision on who should be their flag bearer.
How would you examine NUP's vetting process?
If it serves them well, they are able to come up with candidates, and there is no serious contestation that becomes a big obstacle to raising candidates. Their method is serving them well, because you can see they managed to get 57 members of parliament elected, even just sporting. Even in ordinary work, when we are in the government and other organizations, you can do sporting, head hand. You know very well I have never applied for a job, I can tell you. But the president sends his people.
Except now when you apply
Yes,
through the voters.
through the voters. All the jobs I've held, the president sends his people, you saw what? And they land on me and they say, Ofwono can do that job. So head hunting is acceptable. Even if
Is
they
it
didn't-
democracy?
Yes, even if they did not. Let me give you, Jimmy Carter, the former president of America, 77, 81, I think, wrote a book, Citizen, the State, and the Country. At that time, this is 75 about, America, they used to have one bulky fellow in a constituency who decides who is going to get the flag for the Democratic Party. This is 1975 here. And it served America well until they have today. In America, when somebody stands as a president and wins or loses the main election, he remains the flag bearer even for the next season. That's how Donald Trump, when he was defeated in 2020, he remained the Republican flag bearer until yesterday when he won. Would you have a problem? It has served them well. So vetting is one of the methods, and it goes alongside others. And Professor here was giving you our next neighbors here, Rwanda, Tanzania, which is a long-standing democracy now, stable. In Tanzania, even to be a member of the party, you are screened, you are vetted. You don't come from NUP today and join and say I've joined the NRM and you become a member of CCM. No, they put you on a watch list for 2 years.
Which NRM doesn't
Yes,
do?
we don't. So, in the Tanzania for CCM, it is the party, the district party office, which determines. They will have a short list and say in this constituency we only have 2 people. Those are the only ones you members will vote on in your primaries. Nobody is allowed to come in. In South Africa,
From the grassroots?
yes, in South Africa, the ordinary members of the party don't even vote for the MPs. You vote for ANC, you vote for Economic Freedom Party, depending on the number of votes they have got. Then you are now given seats. Out of 500, UANC, we are giving you 300 seats. Choose. And they can choose Ofwono from Karamoja to be the MP of Mbayara municipality. That's their system, it works for them.
Proportional representation.
And so on, and so on.
We had it here.
UK, which you call birth of democracy, you know their number, the number of political party members, you know the MP, they don't vote for the Prime Minister. They vote for the Conservative or Labour or Reform the party with the highest number, its leader, the highest number of MPs, its leader becomes the, and you can see, did you read last week? The Prime Minister can suspend a member of Parliament for just refusing to vote with the party on an issue on the floor of Parliament. Currently, they have just sent away seven or eight members of the Labour Party who are trying to be to filibuster government policy on reforming social security for the old persons and the PWDs. Yes, so vetting is really up to the, don't say that everybody should do like NRM, but even within NRM, in NRM, for example, we have elections of the Bariomusis by universal adult suffrage of all members in the constituency. Now, when we come for the youths, when we come for older persons, when we come for PWD, we go via the electoral college. And that electoral college is, people are elected at the village, you come to a parish, you come to a sub-county, you come to a district. Now, for example, me, the people who are going to vote for me are NRM leaders already elected at district level, executives. Plus, people who were elected in 2021, I never knew I would start today, but I'm now, they are now my voters. People who were elected in 2021, the councillors for older persons at district level. And so every political party, there's the different talents. What is important, like what Musa says, does it satisfy the constitutional provisions and common sense of that party? Now, NRM, you're talking about 400. In our courts here, is there a bar? Can you refuse somebody from complaining? That's part of the democracy. So don't be worried that there are 400 petitions or 600 petitions. What is important, are the aggrieved, do the aggrieved have a place where to go and complain?
Yeah, but it depicts a big flaw in the whole system.
Now we are talking about, apart from what Honorable Musi said, that we have 72,000 villages, unlike the Electoral Commission, which has about 42, half of what NRM has. The electoral, our officials only come to manage elections when there's an election. They are not paid. They're just volunteer workers. Two, if you look at this election, for example, if you have young people, particularly young people, who come and say, Fetukoye, we are tired of standing here. We have been standing since morning. Don't waste our time reading a register. And there's one little girl who's managing, or one little boy who's managing that polling station, which is a village of 600 people. She may be forced to cave in and allow whoever is shouting, the mob now, to vote, because you don't want to be injured. So you say, okay, you are the people in this village, you vote. Now, if somebody doesn't complain, that election passes. But where somebody complains, we have had cases of election officials, they have actually counted very well, but it's now when they are feeling, where somebody go to 23, they put 3 behind here to read the 323. We have many of those cases. Why? Probably they were intimidated or compromised. We have had situations where in the majority of cases, they are compromised. Now, if people complain about that, it is up to our tribunal and now reconciliation committees.
Should everyone go their way? FDC is going by the way of consensus.
Yeah,
elders sit and conveniently get someone.
That's only one position.
No, by the way, in NRM today, we have flag bearers who convinced their competitors, their rivals, and said, I am a better person.
Even Kampala Central.
I'm a better person.
Simon has not talked about it.
I'm a better person. And they grow among themselves.
And they agree.
One person is nominated. We have had cases where somebody actually has got nomination papers, paid even their money, but comes back and writes and says, I have withdrawn. And it doesn't require.
So where do we start from when we are throwing a spotlight on internal democracy in parties?
For me, by the way, the only problem would be to where I see. using violence and intimidation, and using open money. Like some of the things we saw on social media where you find a candidate, or maybe not even a candidate, somebody stands at the footpath there, and then he's the one who distributing money and says, God, vote for Centenary. Now that is out of the electoral, the polling area. You really have nothing much you can do. Maybe those would be the issues. But if you read that Jimmy Carter's book, it will tell you that most of these democracies, as you go, there's a stage where you are, and you have very little to do, but to allow the situation and force. Like now, this violence in NRM and the open brain. There's going to be a time, for example now, how many ministers lost, how many rich people lost, they actually spent money. It is our job to educate our members and voters generally in Uganda that you can eat. And then people who disappeared 5 years ago and is now coming back with the money. Actually, eat the money. Eat the money, vote your conscience, but your Musi will do nothing. And you have seen ministers who have been thrown out. You have seen rich people who have been thrown out. So for me, I'm not even worried about the money. It should be us now campaigning, say, Musisi, Barrio Musi is our minister for 5 years. This money should have given you long ago. Now that has been brought. Please ask him even for more. But vote the candidate you want.
Honorable Centenary
will do nothing. That's what is important. For
Honorable Centenary,
yes.
I think the country is at a point where every house has its own norms. Do you think there can be a common template for which we can use to benchmark or to tick the political parties on multi-party democracy? Or anything works?
You know, you asked a question here, and I remember the professor answered. He said, FDC has set a standard, except that NRM
had set.
The standard is still there. I can tell you, I'm a national vice chairperson for the FDC. I went through a primary election competitively, by the way. I had the powers to dictate from Najanankum and say, there's no primary in Kasese municipality.
Honorable Centenary, the delegates conference,
the benchmark is still there.
The delegates conference that elected you is still being contested in the courts of law.
By who?
It's not yet resolved.
By who?
It's a matter before
contested by who? First of all, you must understand that the people who contested that delegates conference had a sinister motive, and it has now come to pass to the limelight. They are now in PFF. So the issue was not even about the delegates conference. It was about what they were hatching to do. I don't want to go back to that because it's a thing of the past, you know. So we had the delegates conference. Some people went to court.
And he has an issue.
There was a judgment to that effect.
Kamudin is part of Uganda.
And I can tell you that it's no crime for the FDC, for a candidate, for instance, to withdraw and say, for me.
You set a bar that you're now defying.
Dynamics change. Let me tell you, Honorable Kagwanjala. In the past, situations were different from what they are now. We have evolved. And I want to tell you that we are ahead of all these political parties. None of them has gone through what the FDC has gone through. We have gone through storms. We have in the NRM, for instance, in the structure, I heard in the news, they said position of chairman, position of vice chairman is ring-fenced. Nobody is supposed to contest for it. That is the one of the big man and Alhaj Chugongo. But for us, we have subjected those positions every time and again, regardless of the fractures we've had. We have internal mechanisms, systems of getting out of that storm. We pick up our pieces and still get back on our feet.
Well, we'll take a very short break.
You can dare.
I think it's time to ask, as parties preach democracy and act otherwise, is multi-party? Oh, break multi-party democracy in the country. Prof. Roger, have you got to this level where you perhaps say that parties on the surface appear to be preaching water, but behind they drink wine? When you look at all the dynamics that are playing behind the scenes, how people are arriving at tickets, how some people are being edged out.
Surely to some extent, because I'll give credit to, for example, the NRM tried to show transparency. And that was a one way, because they wanted everything to be transparent. But again, we saw a state capture of the system, whereby you would see influence of strong elements of personalized army. For example, in the NRM election, this NRM says they came to give civilians power. But we clearly saw that the military has taken all the civilian power. And until you have military backing, we even saw some of the elections being altered by state factors. For example, RDCs in Rampara, it happened. And also with the influence of the army. And for God's sake, NRM would have been the last to do that. After duping this country, going to Ruwero, that they are restoring and giving back this democratic process back to the civilian. And then we see the military come in and own the system. It was a setback to democracy, and I think there was so much shame to the NRM. And indeed, if these issues are not addressed by the tribunal, they will be like what we would call an issue of state capture. That's what happened, and it was clear. And imagine if it happened within the NRM. What will happen when NRM has NUP and
Now you're looking at NUP. Let's shift goals to NUP and say, could NUP be the best template to emulate when it comes to internal democracy?
NUP definitely hid its character by not holding the massive election. If NUP did the way NRM did, one, there would be, I would predict there would be much more chaos. One, they wouldn't have the facility because they don't have the, one of the things of state capture is, if you go to see the budget the NRM used to carry out those elections, I'm sure it was way in trillions. Then NUP cannot afford that, but it cannot even have the security. But if it attempted, it would have, actually it would have been its death. If it attempted to have an election like the NRM, even because it would have exposed itself. So their approach was good, that they vet underneath, because they don't have the capacity and also the maturity of their voters.
Do you see transparency in the vetting process
of NUP?
Yes.
Definitely it will not be there, because they are just duplicating what the NRM, for example, you see the strong elements of the presidency and his family in NUP, in the vetting. So they're actually copying President Museveni's script. So like you see, if you see even in the SEC, you will see a presence of the first family so much in the politics of NRM. You see it in the politics of NUP, and that worries the country. Where are we going? These two leading political parties having too much the hand of their presidency in their internal structures is worrying the country. And definitely the other parties then are in a form of like, for example, you told me to only react to NUP, but I would also analyze the UPC, and where it has also captured by the former presidency.
How would you illustrate the strongman syndrome within the NUP?
It is very evident, And actually it is, to me, it could even be worse than the NRM, because the NRM, it has manifested after 30 years. For NUP, it manifested at its formation, which is very worrying, because what happened is, in the first 2 years, I mean, it's true, there were complaints about, for example, how do you become the party chairman and your brother is a chairman? You have the president and your brother is the chairman. People have taken this country for granted.
You want to come in?
I want to give him information. He's saying it manifested after 30 years. Can I remind him that when NRM came here, the president was the chairperson of parliament? Are you aware? And his brother was the army commander. Are you aware?
No, one, in the politics, in the military, true, if we judge them as a military government, but in the politics, they hid it until now, we are seeing it. But at the very manifestation of NUP, we saw that syndrome.
Well, to what extent would the strongman syndrome affect the running or the vetting processes and the internal democracy of NUP?
Simon, you cannot differentiate a strong leader or personality from institutions, especially nascent institutions. For so long, ANC, one of the oldest parties, after being around for over 50 years, was under the so-called capture of Madiba, even when he left. People feared to annoy Madiba. People feared. Personalities are like that. We are different. When the founding fathers of the US were, some people are even asking George Washington to become a king, a monarchy, because that was the fashion. So personalities in national institutions, it happens everywhere.
So where is
especially
the
founding personalities? The key issue is that to what extent does that strong personality go in building an institution? That is the question. Otherwise, you can't blame Barrio Monsi for being seen as a strong personality in his constituency. He may even be called to mediate family disputes because of his personality.
He has to become a king.
Is it rife in NUP?
Of course not. Of course not. That's why I'm saying that Professor Rogers, with the greatest of respect, I think analyzes NUP with the lenses of social media. At least I have the benefit of knowing what happens. We've disagreed with our leader. Of course, Centenary, you may not know this. You are concentrating on Najana Nkombi, so you may not know what happens. You have enough in Najana Nkombi too. So what happens is that the narrative that has been created is that everything NUP is seen with bigger lenses. Now, Professor is talking about the first family. That you know the first family NUP. Where is the first family NUP? Where is it?
Yes.
It is not that you who's not seeing the first family.
Oh, you mentioned them. Mentioned them. Mentioned them.
No, I can mention.
Well, we want to cross to Afro Mobile now, but the conversation